So, hi everyone. Welcome back to Raising the New Earth. This is Noah and Brooke. Hi, Brooke.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. So, today we're going to talk about hydration. So, as most of us probably know by now, water is our body's principal chemical component, and it makes up between 50% to 70% of our body weight. Not to mention that our planet is made out of 70% water. And as such, water is super essential to our overall health. And our health is actually dependent on cellular communication made possible by the water. That said, everyone has different capacity for hydration depending on the body's ability for electrical charge. So I own a smart scale, I call, that measures the water weight percentage. It also measures the bone density, etc. So I can see my hydration levels. And I got to tell you, my hydration levels are very different than my husband's. So I stand on about 54 to 55%, whereas my husband's hydration, even though he has a larger expenditure because he's an athlete, he stands on 64%, which is a huge, from my take, discrepancies. Like, why do I get the short end of the stick? But that difference in percentage is because we know that the capacity to hydrate depends on high electrical charge in the body. And we also know that our mitochondria, our cell activity from within produces that energy. So I like those smart scales because you can get probably not super accurate, but accurate enough feedback about where you are in your hydration level. And that is done through sending, they say it's a harmless, I believe them, they send a harmless electric current through the body. So once you stand on the scale, there's a process called bioelectric impedance analysis, and that gives you the information about your hydration level. So to summarize what I just said, it's in order for us to truly be hydrated, we do need healthy and hydrated mitochondria and bioterrain. We also need to note that completely purified water is dead water. So we used to use Kangen water, and I have friends that uses reverse osmosis water. That is not living water. Completely purified water is indeed dead water. Water needs its minerals because water is dynamic, and every millionth of a second, that water molecule releases a hydrogen that grabs another one. So it doesn't get pumped into our cells. Instead, it has a passive entry and exit. So, Brooke, what water system do you use in your household, and what do you think about hydration in general?
Um, well, well, first of all, even going back to that hydration scale that you have, I would be very interested to see what mine is. I'm like really interested in looking into maybe getting one or seeing if there's somewhere I could go and measure my hydration levels because in all honesty, it really wasn't until Journey of Intrinsic Health to where I fully like got it as far as like what true hydration really looks like, because before that I really was like, oh yeah, just drink water as long as it's filtered and doesn't have all the harmful things. Like I had heard like remineralize your water, it's important, but as far as it really sinking in as to what that means, and that like water truly is like this electrical event within your cells, it like that was completely lost on me. I didn't get it. So I've kind of been through this journey in my own home of trying to figure out what the best way for us to get, the best water source is as far as drinking. Because we had always used reverse osmosis. And for a while I
Mhm.
did add minerals in, and I still think that's like a good way, either sea salt or I had some like trace mineral concentrate that I would use. But um, I've we found a distributor of Mountain Valley spring water, which I think from all the research that I've done seems like a pretty decent source for spring water.
Mhm.
Which, spring water, it's a living water source. So you, of course, want to make sure that it really is pure and doesn't have all the contaminants, but that it is, you know, should have all of the minerals and kind of has that electrical charge that your cells need. So, but I guess going back a step further, I find it so fascinating that like water is essentially like a primary element in the creation of everything on this planet for the most part. But yet modern science, as technologically advanced as we are, so much progress that we've made, we have this abundant element that we really have not even scratched the surface of really understanding truly the power of what it is. And so I just find that interesting. And I think from my perspective, I'm like, wow, look at all of the potential that we have in being able to study water, to understand water at a deeper level, and like what that can mean for our health on a physical level, but then also like our emotional and our mental health. Like I am beginning to see water as like essentially the glue that brings all these pieces together, because water, you know, when you look down to it, and we'll get into some of the studies, and like, but that it can hold consciousness, it can hold memory. So it begins to make a lot of sense where you have yoga poses where you're like deep hip releases. You know, it tends to bring up a lot of emotions in people. Well, you know, your fascia is opening, and if that's holding memory in your body, then it's like, oh, that makes total sense of why it is. So I just find it like so interesting that water is like, there's so much there that it just pulls the pieces of things together in that way of what it can do for our health.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I remember we got a water machine. It's called Kangen water machine. No, not to diss on Kangen, but uh, we spent a lot of money on that machine just to later find out that the few $100 worth of Berkey is actually holding more minerals and it's not dead water. So we personally are doing that. I found Berkey to be amazing. So it comes with 2 charcoal filters, and then we added the I think it's either the chlorine or the fluoride white filters to it. So we use that. We also have a saline water system throughout the house. So what it does, because the water, I know in California, is very hard, these are very harsh water, we use salt water throughout our faucets. So we use salt water in the shower, because when we first got to this house, I noticed that after I took a shower, my skin was so dry and irritated, kind of bumpy. I was like, what is going on? And then when we decided to do the saline water, it immediately helped that. So you feel really lathered. You feel like you still have like a layer of soap once you finish taking a shower. But I have to add and say, my diet has changed very drastically as well. So not to say that if one puts saline water system in their household, it's going to fix everything. My diet has changed. I moved out of more, you know, caffeine and slightly more processed food because I had no time with, you know, 2 little babies, to more juicing, more whole foods, mostly plant-based. So that change was really, really went hand in hand. So the saline water probably helped, but also the nutrition and me revitalizing and remineralizing my mitochondria and my gut system. I think that helped as well. In hindsight, though, I don't know if I would do a saline water throughout the system. I would probably go with what we have now. We have Berkey shower filters as well um, to get rid of the fluoride in the water and the chlorine. So we have that. I would probably just do that.
Yeah, I'm that's like good to know, because that's kind of my next frontier. Is we were looking at doing like a whole reverse osmosis system for the house, and it's just, and it may be I think that it's such an individual, you know, decision on what is the best, because, well, and taking it back to where you live, it's so specific as to what is in your water. And there are we can put them in the show notes, but I know there are places where you can get like an understanding of your particular water, like what it tends to be composed of. So that can help make a decision on what would be the best. But yeah, I mean, when you think that, most of what is put on your skin is absorbed within your skin, you need to, pay attention to that as far as what you're bathing in, what you're showering in. And then the other component to that is, in a shower, it's steamy. So that water is coming in, you're inhaling that water as well through the steam in the shower. So it's super important. And, going back to your diet, like that's what I think is what people kind of should realize as well, is like when you're talking about hydration, it's not just drinking water, but that like these whole foods, one, like you're going to restore your gut health, which has so much to do with your hydration, in that it restores the barriers within your body, and that allows your cell to maintain the water that is in there. And then also, fruits and vegetables have that structured water that our cells can actually use to rehydrate themselves. When you're talking about dead water, I think that's kind of, if there was one main point of it, it's like dead water has no way of actually getting inside your cells. Right. And it's with that electrical charge of the minerals that it actually gets inside. And when it comes to like, we hear so much about anti-aging and, just being able to, reverse diseases, or like what sort of things, like it really can come down to the foundation of hydration. Because, we always hear like that inflammation is like what is tied to disease and aging and all of these things. But essentially hydration is where inflammation begins, in a sense, because like it's the dehydration of the cell that then affects like every signaling system in your body, because the mitochondria, the powerhouse of your cell, that where you're generating energy, that it can't do its job of like renewing the cell and renewing, your bodily system. So I just think that that's like an important thing to note too, that it's so tied to, what our body, how the ability for our bodies to thrive, I should say.
Exactly. Yeah,
hydration.
Exactly. And I always get a kick about, hearing that hydration is just drink 8 cups of water and you'll be fine. Or, have clear urine. While drinking 8 cups of water is not going to harm you, but it's not going to do you any good if. So the way that we do that is in dietetic school, we were taught to do, half your body weight in ounces. So drink that. But even that is not going to suffice if A, your water is dead water, B, your expenditure is larger than the water intake, and C, if you're not eating enough fruits and veggies in their possibly raw steamed form to get those extra minerals and water in. So the 8 cups of water is very misleading. People are like, okay, so if someone who's a 200-pound woman, let's say, drinking 8 cups of water, that's not going to move the needle in the direction that she desires, right? And like you said, because the cells need to be able to hold water in a gel state, like we learned, this requires a higher electrical charge that is made possible by a healthy microbiome. So your microbiome, the biome, is that terrain of your microbials, of everything that is going on within you. So like you mentioned before, if this is not healthy, it's going to be very hard for your body to move that water in that gel state. So like you said, the true hydration does come from eating our water, the fruits, the vegetables, the spring water, the magnesium that you take in, whether it's through, high quality capsules of magnesium, or we're going to talk a little bit later about float tanks, a little Celtic sea salt if you want to add to your water, squeezing a little bit of lemon to your water, etc. So yes, the biodiversity of a microbiome we come across will be highly dependent of everything that we just mentioned that we can pump into ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And going to back to where you said like the, just drink half your body weight in water, and like that,
Right.
if your pee is clear, then that means you're hydrated. Like I think that that's probably one of the most common
Yeah.
misconceptions in what hydration truly is, that's like, does that's really not, it's not even, it's not even that it's not the whole picture, but it's kind of missing the picture too. Like, yes, there is a place for hydration as being like something that kind of can flush and move through the toxins and stuff, but in no
Yeah.
way is that addressing like the intracellular environment we were
Yeah.
talking about. Yeah.
That said, I do use it with our kids. It's like, okay, is your urine clear? And they
Yeah.
come cheering, Mommy, my urine is, they don't use the word urine, obviously, they use the other word. My pee pee is clear. I'm good. I
Yeah.
drank enough water.
Well, and that being said, and it is like, I mean, obviously if you're drinking water, your pee is going to be a little clearer.
Clear. Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's not that it's like not a good indication at all. And yeah, I do
Yeah.
think that that's like a way to like visually for kids to understand,
Yeah. Yeah. That
to
helps
make
them.
it,
Yeah.
yeah, and make it kind of fun for them too. Yeah. So that being said, I get like, as far as other, like, because again, we think of hydration as like, okay, drink your water. So we've at least now gotten like, okay, well, it's not just drinking water, it's drinking like water that is living, and then also eating fruits and vegetables. But there's other ways that you can
Mm-hmm.
hydrate beyond just like, beyond consuming the water through
Yeah.
your mouth. Yeah.
Yeah. So we just recently experimented with float tanks, which are really cool. So I'm from Israel, and we used to go to the Dead Sea all the time,
Mm.
and that's kind of like a Dead Sea in a pod. So the tank being in that huge pod, we had like these, LED lights, soothing music, and you have roughly 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt mixed with 200 gallons of water. And you get into this pod, and it reduces external stimulation by giving you soothing sounds, by having you float, and by these LED lights. And so the water is actually heated, so it's not too cold. It's heated to the outer skin temperature, and that high salt concentration of the water tank makes it so easy for you to float. So you are on your back, and they teach you different posture, to rest your head on your hands and this and that without touching the roof or the floor or the walls. It's also soundproof, and it's dark. So it's really an amazing sensory experience, I would say. And it gets you into this quiet meditative state while hydrating your body, while floating. And it helps you also with, to relieve your stress and if you have any pains or aches. So I found it to be extremely uh, calming and hydrating experience that I recommend all my clients. I just personally, an hour is too long for me to not do anything, me. So for me, half an hour would have sufficed, because at some point, like a half hour into the session, I'm like literally sitting on the water, and it's hard to sit, and your tush is like moving all around. It's like, okay, now what? Like, I'm good. I'm hydrated. I'm good. Now get me out of here. And I didn't close the pod all the way, because like I'm gonna be way too claustrophobic. I needed
Yeah.
open. So the guys who work there was like, yeah, sure, you can leave it open. You can do whatever the heck you want to. It's your own room. So you are in your room, you have your own shower. It's really cool. It's a cool experience. Have you tried it?
No, I have not. And I, especially hearing you even talk about it more, because I know you've talked about it before, but I'm like, I need to put this on my list to try that. But
So
I
good.
had also forgotten, with being from Israel, that, the Dead Sea is there. Have you floated in the Dead Sea?
Yeah, yeah. We all
Yeah.
do as kids. Yeah, we
It's
all
just,
go there. Yeah.
do you feel that like that, I mean, I guess as kids, you're not maybe as conscious of that, or like not knowing, but like, I'm just curious, like, that's got to feel so good to have all of those minerals. I mean, it's like super healing
It
to
is.
be in that. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it is. And they offer, like, now, years later, decades later, they offer so many treatments. For example, my dad, who is a disabled war veteran, he gets all those, I think it's like a bi-yearly or quarterly stay at the Dead Sea with all the
Mm.
complementary massages and clays and everything that it offers now, because it offers a bunch of healing modalities, not just floating in the Dead Sea, but a bunch of other things. So I think also as a child it was a little stinky, like I smelled something that was a little funky. But as a child you don't really feel dehydrated, which is really
True.
interesting. Like as we grow as adults, I think we become more sedentary. We eat more
Hmm.
processed foods. We, there's so many things that we are going against nature, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I need to go to a float tank. Whereas if I would just, keep my body's homeostasis, I probably wouldn't have needed one. But here we are.
Yeah. Well, I never thought about that. Like it's like yeah, as you age, you become more dehydrated, so you're going to be able to feel
Mm-hmm.
that difference a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One thing I have done like is natural hot springs, which have a lot of those minerals
Mm-hmm.
and it does feel so good. You feel like relaxed and but now that like I have such a deeper appreciation for hydration, I want to go back and do like the hot springs and even the float tank because it's like I'll have that awareness on a whole different level of how my body's being hydrated, which I think is
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I think in general, like for me, even just, walking bare feet in the ocean, or, the moist sand that's really close to the ocean, there's something so healing and so beneficial, I find. Like for me, that would be the ideal place to live. Like I would love for my family and I to live somewhere closer to the beach, but I prefer it to be warm water. So that kind of narrows down the options right there. Like I
Yeah.
don't want to be in cold water. I'm not going to go in.
Not one of the cold plungers like
Yeah,
that's
no.
so popular now. Yeah.
And so that's another technique, right? We talk about a bunch of techniques, and we're going to go back to um, Dr. Emoto and
Emo-
yeah, we're going to go back to this.
yeah.
But
Yes.
another
Yeah.
technique to raise one's hydration is said to be, cold plunge or ice baths. And I think Wim Hof was the one who kind of brought it to the Western society as another way of, I guess, challenging your body, and not just to help your brown fat, but also to increase hydration. So my husband has put a cold plunger, that's how you can call it, a cold plunge bath outside in our backyard. And he goes in there and then he kind of experiences between hot jacuzzi and cold plunge ritual. And our kids do that as well, quite fondly. I'm not doing it. Um, but it adds to, like you said, bathing in natural springs, rivers, and oceans is also hydrating. Whereas chlorinated water, like the swimming pool, public swimming pool, do the exact opposite because it pulls the hydration from our cells and it actually dehydrates our skin. That's why we have wrinkled skin after bathing in a swimming pool. But yeah, so cold plunges and ice baths are another way of hydrating our body. Have you done that, Brooke? Did that make it on your list?
No. I I would love I love the idea of going and doing a cold plunge, especially like in a cold ocean or like the
Yeah.
idea sounds great, but I am not a cold person. So I want to think that one day I will, like just so I can experience it and say, okay. But yeah, it's not something that I've ventured into yet. It does seem to be something that like more there like a lot of
Go ahead,
men
say it.
tend to do.
Yes. Say
It's
it. It's
like
true.
yeah, it's like a I don't know if it's like a way to prove masculinity. No, I there are definitely benefits. I totally understand and see the benefits, but it is funny that it does seem to be like something that men are really getting into in the
Like,
health field is like this cold plunge.
and we talked about it the other day. I mean, I don't see any of the blue zones doing ice baths.
Right.
I when I visited Russia, yes, a lot of people just rolled in the snow naked. I remember doing that, but they're also not really they're not part of the blue zone. They're not part of those who live past 100. But as much as we are in the wellness field and we enjoy looking at the tech tools that help us, or even doing a cold plunge to add to that longevity, I think
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, you can really strip it down to basics. So if you eat,
Exactly.
if you eat whole food, if you go by the ocean, if you dip your body in the ocean, you do all these things, I don't think, and you mentioned it, those things are free, which is absolutely right. I don't think you need to go extreme. Like I say half jokingly, I pushed, kids through my vajayjay. I don't need to prove myself anymore. I'm tough as a rock. I don't need to go to an ice bath and like go for that, 130 or whatever. Not for me, but I
Yeah.
understand its benefits, but I rather eat whole foods for that benefit and not ice bath.
Yeah, exactly. It's like any of these wellness trends. Like, yes, I'm sure they're extremely beneficial, but like you're saying, like it really there's so many basics that we can do that are free and easily available, sunlight and, if you are near an ocean or like a, natural body of water to do that. And there's just so many other tools that if that's something you want to do and
Yeah,
that sounds amazing to you, go for it. But yeah,
exactly.
do you have to do it to, be 100% healthy? Like you said, the blue zones, none of that was said that they cold plunged every day. So
Yeah,
that being said, though, and when you said the pool being dehydrating, like chlorine and stuff, I think that is another important point, though, too, is like there are so many things within like the normal modern living, normal that aren't like that. Yes, they're common, but they're not normal in like a natural environment or what our bodies kind of um were evolutionized for.
hmm,
But like the chlorine and then also EMFs can be very
right.
dehydrating, like in that you're taking electrical, I'm not going to explain this right, but essentially like it's messing with the electrical current in your body, and that's where grounding is
Hmm.
another wonderful way to rehydrate your cells, because essentially you are taking in the negative ions from the earth, and that electrical charge is being able to essentially hydrate your cells. So
Yeah,
I think that that's really fascinating.
and for those that don't understand the groundings, you can watch the Earthing movie or read the Earthing book. What it basically means, you're connecting to the surcharge, the electrical charge of our Mother Nature. So some people, aka myself, we use bed grounding sheet. We also use, if you go to, I think, is it the Earthing website? We're going to put it in the
Mm-hmm.
notes.
Yeah.
So you get kind of like a bundle. You get the book about earthing, you get bed grounding sheet, you get, kind of like flip-flops, and you get a little like carpet like that you can stand on it that still gets you the electrical charge. That, so again, we're getting really fancy, but grounding is about really putting your feet 15 to 20 minutes a day, bare feet. It can be on the concrete, it can be in a soil, but have that immediate connection to the electrical charge in our ground will help hydrate, will help potentially reach a better hydration for your body.
Yeah, exactly. The key is no shoes there, like
Yeah, no
no
shoes.
rubber soles. So yeah,
Yes.
even your socks are fine to do, but yeah,
Yeah.
just no rubber soles. And another thing that I tend to do, because I don't always like to go barefoot in the grass, just with everything going, but
You
I'll
don't
just
like?
sit. I don't like, so our grass at our last house was so, I mean, it was not comfortable to go. It wasn't like a lawn. And the other thing, and that being said too, and this, not that I want to go too deep in this, but like you also have to be careful going barefoot. Like you want to make sure that you're not in a lawn that's sprayed with pesticides where you're. So you want to do it at some place that is
Your
clean, but
grass, if you have your own
yeah,
grass.
but what I do love to do is I lay in the on the
Mm,
ground, like, and even like it feels so good, and to just let the sun like come
yeah,
on me, it feels incredible. So
yeah.
that's kind of
And I
more so
I
that.
found the book. So if you see it on YouTube,
There you go.
called Earthing, the most important, what? The most
Health
important health
discovery.
discovery ever? Question mark. One of the
Yeah.
many. So it's written by Clinton Ober, Stefan Sinatra, MD, and Martin Zucker. Great
And
book.
again, what a simple thing to do, to just
Yeah,
go out
take off your
bare
shoes, go
feet
out.
for, yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
But yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another hydration, potential hydration, better hydration move would be if you go into fasting, grazing, and feasting cycles. It says to also increase your hydration by encouraging your mitochondrial turnover. Um, so as far as that concerned, so fasting, if you think about it, when we eat breakfast, we are breaking a fast, right? Break, fast. And our fasting is when we sleep. So when people talk about fasting, we tend to go really hard into, okay, I'm not going to eat, or I'm going to do a really small window of eating. And I don't think this is a one size fits all. I think also when it comes to women, we have to be aware of the cortisol levels. And some people that don't eat in the morning can just put their body into a stress. But a normal fasting would be just don't eat a couple of hours before you go to bed. Obviously, you don't eat anything during the night because you don't want your digestive system to work. You want to rest. You want to go into this REM state of you resting and fully replenishing your body and waking up in the morning and have your breakfast. That on its own is fasting. So you have fasted and you're breaking that fast with your breakfast. Now, as far as grazing concerns, again, this is not a one size fits all. Some people praise grazing. Some people say grazing is not okay. As someone who used to graze, I used to do for a few years just for me to kind of like build my immune system. I grazed all day long on fruits and vegetables. And that really helped me restore my immune health. But after a while, I noticed that my weight has plateaued. It was no longer beneficial for me. And I moved into a season where I had to stop doing that. And also, it kind of encouraged me to to get more calories in, which I really didn't need at that time. So now I'm trying to quit the grazing that I was brought up on. We never had like breakfast, lunch, dinner. We had breakfast, the post breakfast, the post breakfast, post all day. We eat all day, like all day. Even now, when you see my mom will always have something, she's biting into in her mouth like all day. So I wanted to break that cycle for myself, realizing that I needed the breakfast, the lunch, and if I choose dinner, depending on how late or how early I go to bed. So just notice that it's not a one size fits all, and you really have to get to know your body or work with a health coach or a nutritionist to guide you into the optimal way for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It speaks so well to like just using that intuition and knowing that your body is going to need different things at different seasons of your life. But definitely intermittent fasting has become, kind of like another health trend. And I mean,
Right.
for lack of a better word, trend, but that,
Yeah.
Really the science behind it is that just what you said, like when you give your body that rest, then it allows, all of the cellular waste in essentially to be cleaned up. And then how that's related to hydration is that, again, those mitochondria, it's kind of like cleaning house, and there's not, energy that's being wasted. And therefore, that electrical potential can come back to the cell so that therefore it can draw the water back into the intracellular environment and essentially hydrate the cell. So it's fascinating how all that's related. Yeah.
Right. And water does heal. We talked about before doing the show about water fasts. So we were introduced to water fasts on the coach's journey of intrinsic health, and that again, these water fasts, I don't think that they are for everyone. Like what I wouldn't recommend. My husband, for example, who has a low body fat, he's super active. I know what he eats. He eats super clean. I wouldn't recommend that to him. Nor would I recommend intermediate fasting for him. I actually shoving calories to him. So What I don't do, what I try to avoid doing, like eating the kids' leftovers, I give him that. So that's that. So if he was my client, I would be like, nope, nope, water fast is not for you. But that said, water is healing in some places like the True North in California, in Santa Rosa, California. They are fully operated system and clinic with MDs and nutritionists and naturopathic doctors fully equipped to help reverse from the most minor chronic illnesses to the most severe chronic illnesses through water fasting. Can be anytime between 5 to 40 and even more. And then they introduce the client to a healthier dietary juicing and dietary intake of micronutrients. So water does heal. And I experimented with a 5-day water fast during our course. And I found it to be, well, of course, it was a struggle the first 2 days. I would say my hunger trigger was on, and I wanted to eat, but I noticed that it kind of reduced the amount of noise that I had in my head. And I found that emotional aspect to be really soothing. So I would say from the end of second day all the way to the fifth day, I felt really empowered. I felt that food should not run my life. And obviously, I am more than replenished. And there were things that you do during this water fast in order to make sure that you're not dehydrated. So there's a bunch of things that you would do. But I really felt that I could do that for 10 more days. I felt that it cleared the toxic emotions that I had. It cleared the noise in my head. I didn't see a lot of loss in weight, um, but that was not my intention. My intention is just to go for it and see how I feel. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, have you tried it?
I have not yet. I would like to this spring. I think when we were going through the program, and a lot of people kind of did it the same week, but I
Mm-hmm.
just felt like I still felt like I was kind of like getting back to like an equilibrium from being postpartum, and like I had just
Yeah.
completed nursing, and I'm glad too, because later I got like a blood test that I'm really low in iron. So I've really been like
Yeah.
focusing on just
Uh-huh.
getting like, I haven't had my minerals tested, but I just
Yeah.
think that like from all of those years of drinking mainly reverse osmosis water, and then
Yeah.
also being pregnant and nursing, that I most likely have been extremely depleted of minerals as well.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I just want to get back to kind of like a baseline state, and then do the fast. So that being said, I'm thinking like, and I just feel like the spring is a good time to do
Mm-hmm.
that. So I'm thinking like maybe March, I might try to do the fast. But that's really interesting where you were talking about like the emotional aspects that you were
Yeah.
feeling as well, and just kind of the clearing, and it ties well. It's a really good segue. Well, one, like I think, when you look at religion, um religious practices that have
Mm-hmm.
incorporated fasting, I think that that's interesting to make that tie back,
Right.
that it makes sense, like like so much of like that ancient wisdom, that it's like, oh, now I get it. um
Yeah.
but also just understanding water's capacity to hold consciousness, is just like, that's kind of like the frontier that I want to like really start to understand better, because it really, for me, like I had learned, and I guess just to backpedal a little, Dr. Masaru Emoto, who is a
Mm-hmm.
Japanese doctor, did 20 years of essentially research on water, and essentially provided, factual evidence that human human vibrational energy, so our thoughts, words, ideas, and then also music, like
Mm-hmm.
affect the molecular structure of water, and that essentially water is living consciousness. That is like how a primary form of how consciousness kind of communicates. And, you know, for me, I had always heard like plants can respond to different music and energies. And I was like, okay, yeah, I guess I kind of get it, but how would that really work? Or even ourselves, like I understood that, like, yeah, certain, like I said at the beginning, like certain yoga poses release emotions, or that what you tell yourself and your thoughts and your words matters. But it was like, when I put together that water is what it is, water, the structure, the actual structure of water is changing based on the vibration and like the energy inputs that it's getting, it all clicked to me like, oh, this is how, you know, how our vibrational, you know, surroundings impact our biology is through that. And that's like, it was like a huge you know, aha for me in a
Yeah.
sense.
His
So
his his book was a New York bestseller, The Hidden Messages of Water, and
mm-hmm.
it really made me think like if we transform the water and the thoughts that we are made of from both, what else is possible? Like
Exactly.
how can we be exposed to a more loving messages, more, compassionate human intention that will result in physical molecular transformation in water that is within us, which in return will result in a better human experience for us from the inside out, instead of creating a discord that I feel we currently have. Right? It's
Yeah.
super interesting. He has studied how sound affects water. He demonstrated how certain types of sounds, like for example, classical music, generates these beautiful crystalline patterns, while heavy metal music generates, it was really distorted crystal formations. And if you look at the website, if you just Google Dr. Emoto hidden messages of water, you'll get to see all these beautiful pictures that were taken. And in the images, you see a crystalline formation resulting from water exposed to Mozart's Symphony Number 40. And then in contrast, you see how the water crystal changes after listening to, like I said, heavy metals. It is insane. And Dr. Emoto's work, his scientific studies, really inspired so many other scientists and doctors to make other discoveries, such as, our teacher, Dr. Zach Bush, that he shared that even though we don't understand how water holds memory to it, it seemed that it does. So if you do something to it, such as say a blessing to our water, and you talked about religion practices. So in all religion, we study to say a blessing, but maybe that blessing is not in order to be engaged in prayer in order to celebrate an omnipotent God, but rather a very specific way for us to interact with our water molecules in a way that we can benefit for our own health. So all of that come, a full circle. Or another example of someone that took Dr. Emoto's studies further is there was an Austrian engineer, and since 1994 he has developed devices that structure the water molecules and assist regular water, in being its highest vibration as living energy through these devices that are shaped like the crystalline that Dr. Emoto has created through putting pleasant music to it.
Yeah, it opens up so many possibilities for really understanding how we can heal at a deeper level, like by understanding like how to, you know, the water within our cells can be given messages in a sense, like through our vibrations, through the energy that we're exposed to, that changes the molecular structure of it. And that is,
Yeah.
there's so much there. Yeah.
And the words themselves actually emit that unique vibration that the water is sensing. And if we change the word water for us, or our body is sensing, then you know that you receive, and the water receives the vibration, and it expresses that message of the words in a very specific form, kind of like a visual code for expressing words. So if water is exposed to the words, or a child is exposed to the words, thank you, that forms a beautiful geometric crystals. So maybe that forms a desire of a child to do certain things, certain good things, and that appreciation forms a loving heart within that child, and not needing to either prove himself or herself, or basically know their worth. And we talked about in previous episodes, like knowing your worth and feeling that you're loved from the inside out allows you to do very different things that someone that goes out to the world and have the I'm not good enough attitude for the rest of their lives, and other
Yeah.
degrading words that result in deformed crystals.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that also brings the point of just everything that you're surrounding the child with, like I'm much more conscious about the music that I
Yeah.
play. I mean, for myself and for what sort of messaging that my daughter's picking up on. Like
Yeah.
it's important. Like that is what your cells are, picking up on through this water structure. And the other thing there, sorry, the sun is like totally in my eyes. But the other important piece there, sorry, I'm like completely
Blind with the sun. The
I
sun is
know
just
I am. It's yeah. Like what, there was something else really important. Oh, I know. But so going back to it with the children and like being able to um create that loving environment and the words that you're using with them rather than
Mhm.
the negative. I think that another important piece that came from a Dr. Emoto's work is the lack of energy, and that really like the lack of it, which energy is actually just attention. So
Mhm.
that like an abandoned child or someone that just gets ignored completely, no sort of like whether it's good or bad, is actually even a different and even more like chaotic crystalline structure. So
Right.
I think that that's really interesting too, that um just how much it speaks to showing a child like that they matter, and that their presence is there, and that they're seen and they're heard and they're felt. Because even if it is not that we want to show those negative messages, but it's like at least they're at least seeing that they're seen and heard in a sense. But like that ignoring
Absolutely.
is just completely detrimental. And then what I really, really blew me away when we did Journey of Intrinsic Health. And again, I've seen this before, but that Jen, one of our coaches,
Hmm.
showed 4 apples, that she just did this experiment on her kitchen counter. I want to do this at some time too, but I'm afraid that I'll just forget and not
Yeah.
the results will be all skewed because I didn't talk to it in 5 days. But essentially, she took like 4 different apples, put them in totally different rooms, talked
In a
really,
mason
really
jar.
nice to one. Yeah, in a mason jar. And, open the lid and talk to each one individually. And it was like, uh, one was good, one was sexy. She talked sexy to the apple. And then there was an anger, and then I'm forgetting what the other one was, but
Not ugly. It wasn't ugly.
maybe.
Okay.
But it was the good and the sexy apple, and I think that the sexy apple actually like was still the most good shape. Like it
Uh-huh.
didn't have the browning and the
Uh-huh. Yeah.
degradation, and it was the
Yeah.
one of anger that she spoke anger to, that that brown. And like you saw these apples, and like it was very clear to the
Yeah.
naked human eye of how these different apples aged on the counters. And
Yeah.
to me, like again, when you're talking about plants and food, it negates any sort of placebo effect of like being measured. It's like that right there shows um that these these stationary this fruit is responding to
Yeah.
its environment, which is
Absolutely. The words gratitude and love, they form the fundamental principles of the laws of nature and the
mm-hmm,
phenomenon of life. And like you said,
exactly.
you are being very careful about what your daughter is listening to. I do the same thing. Like there's a song right now playing. It's called "I Love It That You Hate Me," and so it just popped on the radio because that's what I have. I have Sirius XM or whatever. It popped on the radio, and my daughter's like, I love it that you hate me. She said, that doesn't make any sense. I said, you're absolutely right. And to myself, I made a mental note like, don't play this song because this is not the right message I want to, give my 5-year-old daughter. I love you when you hate me. No, I
Yeah.
love you. I love myself. I love myself, and therefore I'm able to love you. And only when you love me, then I can love you in return. Love you when you hate
Yeah.
me. So you know what? So as a protest, started putting like Joel Osteen and positive messages in my. So I'm like, what? I don't know what else is gonna pop up on the radio.
Yeah, I don't really even play the radio in my car, like because I don't know if it's one like being a parent, yes, but then also just I think if I didn't understand this at the deep of a level of like how important, all of the just what we're talking about, the vibrational energies that are being picked up by your cells, like those two things, I listen to music, like modern music now in a whole different way. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
whoa, what is this saying? I mean, and like, honestly, it's probably like at least 80% of the music today. And maybe it's not as like,
Yeah.
I'm just like, I don't, that sort of energy is not needed. And like,
No.
sometimes I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm like, I would roll my eyes at my dad who like, when we were watching like a bad movie or like music that we were listening to, like, oh, whatever, dad, like you're just an old, but
You're an old, yeah.
yeah, you don't get it. You're just old. But now I'm like, no, wait a second. Like, so I,
Yeah.
but I do feel like it's not just like, oh, that's morally, and it's
No.
like, it's from a
Messages, hidden messages.
exactly. Yeah, it's like what do you want your subconscious picking up on and like your body responding to what sort of messages? And when
Yeah.
you look at things from that angle, then what your environment is and what you're surrounded by, people you're surrounded by, what you're consuming just in an everyday like begins to shift and you have a greater appreciation for being conscious
Absolutely. And
of
and
that.
and and injecting that consciousness in our water. For example, we have infinite love and gratitude on all our water bottles and by the Berkey filter. Infinite love and gratitude, just stickers that we printed for ourselves to remind ourselves to say a blessing. And I also say a blessing. I say a Jewish blessing before I drink. But it it doesn't mean that we need a Catholic priest or we need to be Jewish to produce holy water, right? Even though it's said that that consciousness and the prayer did change the molecules of the water, but we can each be engaged in prayer or meditation before drinking our water or consuming a meal, saying something as quick as thank you water for healing my body, or thank you water for being the amazing molecule that will strengthen my microbiome, or whatever else we decide to say, and connecting to that water. It again, it's not going to be in obedience to the omnipotent God, but it's going to be a very specific way for us to benefit our health, our own health.
Yeah, exactly. And really, that's like the true spiritual understanding of, I mean, from my angle, of what a blessing can do. Because if you really want to bring it to the context of spirit and God, like you can look at that is the way that God communicates through water. That is, how that energetic frequency is showing up. So if it's kind of like you can look at it as the way that you're talking to God, like by blessing your food, is
Mm-hmm.
through the water that is presenting in the food. And,
Right.
and yeah, I agree. We say a blessing at dinner. We always say a blessing. I need to get more into just even before I eat anything, to bless the food that I'm about to take in.
Yeah, we do it with our kids when we have a lemon tree in the backyard. So whenever they pick lemons, they know how to say thank you, lemon tree. Because
Oh,
I didn't get into blessings with them, but I did get into, when our kids ask me, is this good or bad for me? I said it's as good or bad as you think it is. So what do you want it to be? And then, if I raise them well, they say we want it to be good for us. I said, then it's good. Then thank that piece of whatever cracker or whatever you're eating for making you strong, for making you feel healthy. So that's something I did get into. So less of the prayer, but I'm gonna get to the prayer as well, I think, very soon.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so beautiful. Like what a wonderful lesson for our children to understand water in that way, and to be able to, whatever intention you're putting behind it
Yeah,
is what it will show up as. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Now, I think we have a whole, like a more section about fasting, but I don't know if we want to get into it.
I I say we do like another episode
I think so.
on fasting.
I
Yeah.
think so. It's
Because
worth
there's so
mentioning. And
much
again,
there.
not everyone should attempt doing it, and it should be done, monitored if you have any low blood. So there's a bunch of if. So it's not for everyone.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
All right. So that
Right.
said, that was a full 1 hour episode, Brooke.
I
Go,
know.
Brooke.
Yeah, I think that was maybe our longest of the two of us.
I love that you're holding. So if you're going to see it
I
on YouTube, you're going to
know.
see Brooke
I know.
being blinded by the sun.
Yeah, I've got to get some blinds in here, or just a better situation in general of
It's good for
where
your
I
circadian
podcast.
rhythms. You're
That's
fine,
true. That's true.
right?
Yeah.
It's all
Mm-hmm.
good.
Yep. Yep.
All right. So thank
All
you
right.
for listening,
Thank you, everyone.
and we'll see you
Talk to
next
you
time.
soon.
Bye.
Bye.